The Neothink awakening is the whole psychological, physical, and conscious shift that somebody goes through as they break into the Neothink mentality, which is the next evolution of the human mind. So tell me about the journey that somebody goes through as they manifest that transformation into the Neothink mentality.
Probably the best way to go about this is to actually let you know a little bit about my own journey, because my writings followed my own journey as I went through the transformation. And that will, I think, give you a clear insight as to what happens to readers of my material and anyone else who enters into this Neothink journey transformation. So when I began, I was an ambitious young man, very ambitious. I wanted to succeed. I wanted to do well. I had graduated from college. I wanted to become that very successful entrepreneur, changing the world for the better, bringing my values, creating values. So I began. And as I began, I went through a series of breakthroughs because I had learned something that I've termed in my writings as integrated thinking, as opposed to so many of my peers around me in jobs that I had worked where they were in a what I would call tunnel vision, where they were just following the responsibilities, their job responsibilities given into them from management above, from upper management. But I was able to start pulling together integrations, becoming creative, figuring out ways to save the company money, figuring out ways to bring in more customers. So I was very excited and began writing down my breakthroughs. My first big breakthrough was a time management breakthrough. And back in the 1980s when I really got started, late 70s, 80s, graduated from college, and business books were huge back in those days. Big sellers. Business was, the economy was great. Business was go, go, go. And I'd read every business book that came out. And I began to notice a trend among my peers. And that is they would get psyched. They go to a business event or seminar and come back and be really hyped up for 2 or 3 weeks. And then they just go back to their normal routine. They would try these, time management was huge in the 80s, and they'd be doing all these great things and disciplines and really only gain an extra hour a day at the most. And I remember thinking about that, wow, this really is inefficient. Well, I won't go through the whole history of how I developed the many-day power thinking team, but I did. It's to this day, it's the greatest time management breakthrough of all time. And that was my first book. It was only 80 pages. The original title was Neothink Control, Rapid Power and Wealth Through Iron Grip Control Over Everything That Moves. What a title. Sold like hotcakes. It was a time management breakthrough. So I began rising up in business, the business I worked for. Then I started working with my father. He was a writer, and I said to myself, his works are so valuable, they should become as common as the light bulb. There should be a Neothink discovery in more homes than the Bible. This is just how valuable. In fact, I went through a phase where I named the Neothink discovery the Neothink Bible. So, I was a young brash man and very hyped. I thought because my father's philosophy, Neothink, his idea system was so good and so valuable, I really believed in my heart that we would be bigger than IBM in 10 years. Of course, as I got into it, I began realizing the blocks that I would run into, and this will get me toward the latter part of my journey, which is a latter part of the transformation that you'll go through. But the business was growing at rapid pace. I was going crazy and making breakthrough after breakthrough. I had written Neothink Cosmic Business Control, my first big business book. I really had written that quite quickly because it was like every day I was making a breakthrough. It was just amazing. And I'd write with a pencil, Didn't have, there were from very early Tandy computers that you can enter things in, but my first book, my 80-pager that I wrote, the Time Management Breakthrough, Rapid Power and Wealth Through Iron Grip Control of Everything It Moves. Most people don't know this, but I had finished the book. I had completed it. I was kicking back. I was so excited. And I went to print it, and there's a big cherry bomb on the screen. And this was on the Radio Shack Tandy computer. It's a cherry bomb.
I don't even know what that is.
Okay, well, it looks like a cherry, but it's like a M80. It's like a big firecracker. And that meant on the Tandy computers, your document had crashed.
Oh, okay.
And there was no backup back in those days. To do a backup was a very arduous process of putting in a floppy disk, taking it out, putting another one in, putting some of it over, then taking that out, putting it is a big process.
So the night you completed your book, your computer crashed.
And I lost everything. And I actually, for the first time in my life, saw red. And for a minute there, I actually thought I had thrown the computer out of the second-story window onto the cement below, because I saw myself doing it. I didn't actually do it, but I was in some kind of a weird moment where I actually thought I had done that. That's how upset I was, because there was no recovering that. And it was such a good book. It was, like I said, it became the greatest time management breakthrough of all time.
Which I use today.
I use today. Thousands and thousands of my readers use. Pretty much all of my people in my private clubs all use the Mini-Day Power Thinking Team. So I had to write it all over from scratch. And that's when I learned something, that when you write something originally, it comes largely from the right brain. When you try to remember it and rewrite it, you're writing it from the left brain, and you lose all the texture and flavor of the creative right brain. And I had to rewrite that whole thing. Now, thank goodness, the Mini-Day Power Thinking Team is a fairly cut and dry business technique. So it didn't require a lot of the right brain, per se. I mean, it wasn't overwhelming. It wasn't like a novel, for example. So I rewrote the whole book from scratch. It became a huge seller. And but in any case, and just another quick story for my listeners to know, my big bestseller, Super Puzzle, almost never got written. I had written about 150 pages longhand, and then we went to a bookstore, Borders, I believe it was, because I wanted to get a book. My daughter Monica was in, I think in preschool at the time. So I found this book, Flubber was the name of the book. And so I could read it to a class, because she wanted me to read a book to her classmates. I had somehow left those 150 pages in that store, because, when you're in there with your family and things get a little, and you're searching for a book and you put something down. So that was right when we had the .com collapse. And I had to, when our business gets in trouble, I stop all my writing. I put it all aside. I immediately stopped my writing. Didn't realize I didn't have those 150 handwritten pages. I didn't realize I had left them at Borders. And I poured myself into the business for the next several months. The business demanded my full attention at that time. When we got past the hump of that .com collapse, things got going, the economy came back. I said, okay, now I'm going to continue with this fantastic idea I had, which at the time I called the Miss Annabelle story, which developed into Super Puzzle. So I went to get my 150 pages, and of course I couldn't find them anywhere. And several months had passed, and so I thought, is there any possibility? I backtraced all my steps. is there any possibility I could have left them? That was like a last resort to go to Borders. And the manager had said, yes, we did have that. I was very excited. He said, but we have a policy after, and I don't remember what it was, 1, 2, 3 months, we throw anything away like that. So that was devastating to me, and I had made my decision right then and there because of all people who have read Super Puzzle realize that's purely coming out of the right brain. And I said, I will ruin this product if I try to recreate it with my logical left brain. It just won't have the emotion. People have said the book moves them to tears throughout. There's a reason it does that, because I am reaching in and touching their child of the past throughout that whole book. So I said, I will never write this book. I told your mom, told my wife, I will never write this book, which, by the way, turns out to be probably the most important book I've ever written. Absolutely. So I was very depressed and kind of walked over to the side, and this young lady who worked there said, sir, can you come over here? My manager told me to throw this away. But I looked and I realized what went into this, and I hid it back here, and there it was.
Wow.
So that was the history of the beginnings of Super Puzzle, the Miss Annabelle story.
It almost never got written.
No, it wouldn't have been written. If I did not recover those 150 handwritten pages, that book would not exist today.
Wow.
Yeah. So coming back to my journey, I started off as this aggressive, excited young businessman who was so excited I actually believed that possibly man doesn't need to sleep. That maybe that was something from our primitive past when we had to get up in the trees at night for our security, or maybe in the caves, wherever we were, what point in history. And I thought, well, now with all of our modern shelter and so on, maybe we really don't need to sleep. This is just what an excited young entrepreneur I was. So I actually went to it. I tried to go without sleep. Thought I could maybe pull it off. But after, I don't remember exactly now, but it's after like 3 nights, 4 days with no sleep, I began hallucinating about every 30 to 60 seconds. And that's when I realized it doesn't work. And I gave in, and sleep defeated my attempt to defeat it. But the reason I'm bringing all this in is that's what an excited young man I was about business and about being an entrepreneur, and particularly about bringing values to the world, bringing my father's Neothink, which to this day, to me, stands as the greatest idea system in existence. And I wanted to be bigger than IBM in 10 years. I wanted Neothink to be in every house. I wanted it to be as common as the light bulb. And from my naivete back then, without really fully understanding human mysticism and all the blocks, the mystical blocks that Neothink talks about, I didn't realize what I was up against. Bringing us back to my exuberance as a young man, bringing my brother into the business, going gung-ho, going to the DMA conferences and rising up quickly and expanding the business. And that way my father could concentrate on his writings while I went out there and got my brother involved, and we began marketing Neothink to the world. Then we started going overseas and marketing it to the whole world. It was just a very exciting time. Up until this point in time, this is the beginnings of anyone who goes through the Neothink transformation. Neothink, by the way, is the application systems of the idea system Neothink. I've developed Neothink, the application systems. My father developed the idea system of Neothink.
And the Neothink mentality is?
Well, it's integrating reality, integrated thinking, so you're not stuck in the age-old, which stems back to our bicameral past, the age-old following mode. We're integrating reality. We're becoming creative. That's what human consciousness is meant for, is creativity. So the Neothink mentality breaks you out of the old, stayed old following mode that so many people are stuck in their routine ruts at work, and it breaks you into a creative mode to where you can rise up as a business person, begin creating values and bringing those values to the world. And that's where I was. And then at one point, our company was attacked by the government. My father was spent time in prison. I had to leave the country just to be able to operate the business because all our bank accounts were taken from us, all our cash, all our money. And that's when I was rudely awakened to the evil in the world. You see, up until that time, I was a young, exuberant, excited, exhilarated person creating values for the world, this mutual value exchange, testimonials coming in of how grateful our customers, our readers were, feeling on top of the world, and that's all I knew. And then the attack happened. And at that point, for the first time, I saw the ugliness around me as a young man trying to grow and bring more values to the world. Suddenly it was all shut down, taken away, literally stolen from us. It all had to do with my father and his stand against the government, particularly the IRS and how they operated and so on. And that's a whole story in itself that I'm not going to get into. But that's all behind us now. And that was with the original company, my father's company, I&O Publishing Company, decades ago. Now, at a certain point, I started a new company, which was the marketing arm of Neothink. And it's the Neothink, well, it's a Neothink, private Neothink club. I searched the world for searchers and found searchers, people who were interested in this, and brought them in. And when they come in, they are brought in on this very exciting path that I began my journey. Learning these time management techniques, learning how to develop an area of purpose. That means something, a real purpose where they can drive on. Becoming a value creator, breaking out of the stagnant routine rut that they've been living under in the following mode, leaving that behind. Becoming really a exhilarated, meaningful person with a lot of relevance in the world, with pride and interaction with people who love them because they're bringing them these values. So they go through that process. But then I introduce them during this transformation to the evils of the world, because that is when they'll see it. As long as they're in their little cookie cutter job, doing what the external authorities want them to do, what upper management wants them to do, what the government wants them to do, just do your job and pay your taxes. As long as they're in that little cookie cutter life, they're safe. Nothing's going to happen to them. But as soon as they become substantial, an entrepreneur, that's when they run into things like regulations. They run into legislation. They run into problems because you have value destroyers who rise up off the backs of value creators. When they're value producers, that means if they're working at McDonald's and they're the head chef, well, that's fine. You're in your little cookie cutter job. Nothing's going to happen to you. But if they break out and become a value creator, an Elon Musk or somewhere in between, they're going to run into these problems. They're going to run into regulatory bureaucracies. They're going to run into challenges from the evil side of the world. And they don't know about that evil side because they don't have it in their own head.
Most people don't know the ugliness in the world.
That's right. They're intellectually beautiful. I was an intellectually beautiful person as a young man, trying to beat sleep, trying to make neotech as common as the light bulb, just reading everything I can get my hands on about great business heroes who brought great industries and values to the world. I was intellectually beautiful. And so are my readers. They are intellectually beautiful until they face, or then they will face, for the first time perhaps, the intellectually ugly people in the world. And those are politicians, many people in the media, many regulatory bureaucrats, many lawyers. These are the intellectually ugly people. Now, this is going to be all part of their journey that I take them through. I'm going to take them through what I went through, this exhilaration, starting with the time management, having all of a sudden the productivity to do literally 64 hours in one day. It sounds incredible, but that's what my time management program does, as opposed to 1 hour a day. 64 extra hours a day. You won't understand that until you understand the intensity and so on, until you learn the mini-day system. And then how you will reach forward and bring in projects you would never even think about. Maybe 5 years down the line you would think about this project, but you'll be bringing them in weekly into your mini-day system. It's just amazing how fast you can go with the mini-day power thinking team. So that's how people get started. Then they feel good. They say, wow, I no longer am flipping hamburgers. I'm out here doing something really valuable.
Creating values for the world, rising up in their company. We show people how to start their own business.
Yeah. And now we were just talking about this, Wallace, the other day, how back in my day, before the proliferation of electronics, everything was brick and mortar. So to become an entrepreneur, it was very challenging. It'd be like, maybe, okay, I'm going to start my own nail shop. Or I might try to start a boutique coffee shop. But now with the internet and your reach and worldwide reach, I mean, bam, you can get started right away. In Ascension, we show them right away how to build an audience and start a business. Right away. It's just so available now to us. So people come in to go through the Neothink transformation. They start off at the basics, becoming extraordinarily productive, and with this incredible foresight to pull in projects. What I even go further, I call it pulling in wealth from the future, cashing in on it today. That's where you start, just like I started that way.
It's a beautiful world, a world filled with values, value creation, and helping others, trying to improve your life, the life of those around you.
And offering this to your children and to your grandchildren, it's just a wonderful thing. And it's beautiful. Then at some point of your success, you will face the ugly. And I develop techniques and defenses to deal with the ugly. That's part of your transformation. I don't leave you hanging. I give you the tools and the strength to be able to protect yourself when you face the ugly. And I should bring up the book that I almost never wrote, which is probably my most important book to this date. And the reason I say it's the most important is it paints the picture. It's a right brain phenomenon. It paints the picture of the new world. It paints it for you. It's artistic. It's a novel. It's a trilogy. So anyone can understand it. Now, for those who want to go through the transformation, the awakening, the nonfiction work is probably more important to you because it's giving you the how-to techniques to do it.
Well, all our members use.
All our members use with great success. And going back to the super puzzle, which was originally called the Miss Annabelle story, you actually see what I just described, my own journey. You see that in that trilogy. You start off with this third grade teacher, Miss Annabelle, and these 8 and 9-year-old children, her third grade class. And you know how I talk about the child of the past. That's what you're looking at here. You're looking at children, the child of the past, and Miss Annabelle, who always was in touch with her child of the past, who integrated and resonated so well with her third grade students. Then you have some, and she's intellectually beautiful. Then you have these adults over here who were intellectually ugly. Hammerschmidt, Burke, Miss Minner, the principal, Miss Minner, and then some of the adults who were envious and petty against Miss Annabelle, some of the other teachers. Some of it's because she rejected men's advances because she's a very lovely lady. Some of it's because the women are kind of jealous and envious of her because she is a very pretty lady. So this is how I describe this Thanksgiving Day 1997, the day I started writing this trilogy. I pointed out how you're going to have this innocent, beautiful, intellectually beautiful child of the past rising over here and rising and rising. Then you're going to have the ugly, intellectually ugly, rising and rising. And at some point, bam, they're going to clash. And that's, in the book, that's that first meeting that was held to try to expel Miss Annabelle. And then it goes on from there with the rising of the beauty and the powerful rising of the ugly and the clashes. And that's metaphorical to how the world works today. You have the beautiful, true market business person. I'm not talking about the political business people who are one and the same with government.
So true value creators.
There you go. Let's just call them value creators because too many people are confused over business. They say big business is bad and all these different things. So the true value creators, people who are creating values that are so wanted and wonderful for the people of the world that they're willing to buy it because they want that value. So those are the beautiful people. Then you have these false leaders, and my works get into exactly why I call them false and unearned. And they're the ugly, and they become, believe it or not, they become the rulers, the ruling class over the beautiful people. How mixed up and backwards is that?
They have you believe good is bad and bad is good.
That's right.
It's a reverse world.
Upside down world. That's right. And that is the world we live in. And we have always lived in that. The country that came closest to breaking from that is America. But without the fundamental understandings underneath, which we'll get to in a minute, it's going to eventually fail. We are in a death spiral. It's going to eventually fail. My father used to call it the anti-civilization. The irrationality in the world will eventually overtake the rationality. The ugly will eventually overtake the beautiful. So that's how my journey went. That's how my writings followed my journey. And then when I was done with my writings, I thought, there's something missing. And that was that people could intellectually see what I was doing, but they couldn't feel it. And that's what sent me on a 9-year journey to write the trilogy, the Miss Annabelle story, Super Puzzle. And that takes you from the beginning, the innocence, through the trials and tribulations, through the evil. Ultimately, I say intellectually beautiful, intellectually ugly. It's really good versus evil. And you see the clash of good versus evil in Super Puzzle. And we discover a new world. I wrote another book called The New World, a nonfiction, that actually lays out how that new world would take place in our world. And in Super Puzzle, I lay out what that new world will look like, because we've never seen it on planet Earth, ever. Never have seen it. And the reason we've never seen it is because all civilizations on Earth have been political civilizations. You cannot name one civilization that did not have a ruling class. And all civilizations, and there's reasons for that. We evolved from the bicameral mentality, where our brain did not integrate, did not introspect. It had no subjective thinking at all. It was just a following mode. That was 3,000 years ago. We've evolved out of that to where we do introspect, we do have subjective thinking.
It was basically man was animals. Their brain operated like animals in the automatic reactive state. Just only see what's in front of you. No future thinking. Basically monkey brain.
Right. And the thing is, that's exactly right. And because we had the largest brain by far, we were the most advanced animal. Therefore, we had actually evolved a language. It was a very simple language, but instead of having strong impressions in the mind, say like the deer in the woods would feel if there's a fire, strong impression would make it turn and flee. Whereas man had a much superior guidance mechanism by nature. Nature's guidance mechanism came through language, through audio commands. They were audio hallucinations of their god or gods, where the voice, their ka, that's the god in their head, would tell them, turn and run, danger, turn and run, something to that effect. And it was all powerful. It's just, you can't get away from it. You can't run and dive underwater and it would make the sound quieter. No, it's inside your head. It was an audio hallucination.
It was a full body experience, as if God was speaking directly into their body.
The voices of the gods. And there were different gods. There was the Ka, the one in our own head. Then there were structures of gods, like you had the pharaohs, who were the man gods, who were perceived as, because they could hallucinate, they could audio hallucinate more than others, so therefore they became the one with God, the man gods. And then you had oracles who could communicate with the gods and would give commands to the masses to follow, and so on and so forth. It's the book to read on that is
The Origin of Consciousness and the Breakdown of the Bicameral Mind by Julian Jaynes.
And fantastic book. I really urge people to read that book. They can get it at any bookstore, or of course through Amazon or any online bookseller. Fantastic book about the bicameral mind and how consciousness grew out of that. Bicameral mind got to the point where it could no longer handle the growth and expansion and complications of civilizations coming together as civilizations grew. And so at one point, nature's guidance mechanism failed and the gods went silent. And there's a whole beautiful, interesting history in Julian Jaynes' book that I think everyone would love to read that, to understand about that. So we still have, 3,000 years later, it's been passed down largely. There's a lot of reasons behind this, but we still have largely residual following mode tendencies. And it burdens us. This is why we're factory workers and we never break out of that. We're in that bicameral-like following mode. And this is one of the big advancements of Neothink. It actually pulls you out of that and puts you into the way the human conscious mind is meant to live, and that's with creativity and pursuing your livelihood through creativity versus following stagnant routine ruts.
And it heavily relies on the Neothink mentality is becoming truly your own self-authority, which is a major component of that because the whole structure of society today all wants you to remain in that following mode, to do as I say. You grow up, you're taught, the structures of society are meant to tell you what to do, and you follow, and you just stay in your cookie cutter life. You don't rise up, you don't cause a problem, and you can live as you want to be.
Fantastic point there, because the very reason we even have a ruling class is because of the masses following mode. We're followers, and therefore these smart people, and a lot of them are college graduates, are just more than happy to oblige and become your leaders. Your followers, great, will be your leaders. Are they creating values? No. Are they contributing new values to the world? No. What are they doing? They're being your leaders, and they're supervising everything that's done and making themselves look important, absorbing reverence, honor, and glory by making themselves look important. And how? By making value creators. You're really beautiful, intellectually beautiful people, the people who are the most benevolent people in society, bringing us wonderful values. Well, they're making those beautiful value creators look like they're underhanded people, like they're just trying to get rich off of your backs, like they need to be supervised and punished. And this is their little illusion that allows them to stay in power. Now, if you try to go up and threaten and challenge that, bad things are going to happen to you. And that's not what we're doing.
And that's the ugly.
That's the ugly. That's the ugly. Let's just call it like it is. It's the ugly in society.
The ugly, dishonest, irrational, evil world.
Right. Casting illusions to make themselves appear beautiful, respected, revered, needed, because they're void of self-esteem. You get genuine self-esteem by creating values. That's our essence, creating values and bringing values to the world that you can be proud of. That's how you get self-esteem. Now, if you rise up by literally suppressing and attacking values, you have no self-esteem. So what do you need? You need something to replace it, a pseudo self-esteem. And how do you get that? By creating these illusions to make yourself look glorious and wonderful and needed.
Benevolent, like they care.
Right, like they care. And it's all BS. They are there to serve themselves selfishly off of good people's, off the beautiful's back. So that's what we're dealing with. Now, if you go straight on and attack those people straight on, bad things are going to happen to you. And, I've learned that. We've learned that in our past. So there's another approach that we are going about this. And that's not challenging them head on. Instead, it's simply saying, we're going to withdraw from your system. Yeah, we're still going to have to pay taxes because we're still physically in your system. But emotionally, psychologically, we're going to withdraw. All emotional support for you people. Now we know who you are, what you really are.
Your mask has been exposed through Neothink.
Right. You're wolves in sheep clothing is what you are. And we are going to leave that system. And we're going to start our own, something new. And it's a 10-year plan. And we are now actually formalizing this new country. We're starting as a digital country, the Neothink country, our Neothink network state. And we're going to be starting this online eventually with a 10-year plan to actually raise the funds and purchase land and work towards sovereignty. I do predict that over the course of the next 10 years, because of the goal and what I plan to accomplish in this new world, we're going to attract some very powerful, very wealthy value creators who are going to join us, and they're going to have so much power, money, and influence that it's going to make all of this happen, that it's not just a pipe dream out there. They're going to enable this to actually happen. This is what's going to cause this Neothink awakening with people who join us. It all starts with you personally, just as it did for me. just as it did for Miss Annabelle and her students. Beautiful, beautiful things will start happening when you work with the Neothink techniques, become an entrepreneur, break out of the stagnant following mode, break into and enjoy with a smile on your face the creative mode, the way human beings are meant to live. You discover really who you are. And it's no longer this feeling like there must be more to life. There's got to be something more. That all goes away because now you discover that something more. So that's how you come into Neothink. That's where it all begins. That's where we work with you on things like the course like Ascension. This is the Neothink University. This is where you start. But then as you grow, we bring in and we introduce you to the other. We bring you to this place where you can join this free community, which is the formation of the new country, where everything is going to shift from a political civilization to a pure business civilization, or value creation, a pure value creation society. No longer our civilization, no longer a political, there'll be no ruling class, there's no followers. You live the way the creative human mind was supposed to live. Now, when you see my formal creation of all this, we'll start with a website. There's going to be a lot of material there, and you'll see how all this will work. I've been working 45 years on this, and it's all laid out and created. The logic is there. The line of logic is unbroken, and we can move into this quite quickly, particularly if some heavyweights come on board, when these value creators out there see where this is going, what it can be. They see the web of regulations holding everything back. These people who want to extend their lives, who eventually don't want to die. A number of these big, wealthy billionaires have this little sort of club that they have invested hundreds of millions of dollars toward extending life, and with the hope of curing aging so they don't die. Some of those guys come on board because this is the way to get there quickly. We remove that spider web, that web of regulations, that just anything that tries to progress, it just gets caught in this web of regulations anywhere in the world. And you can't progress at the speed, at the clip you need to, in order to, within our lifetimes, in order to cure complex diseases, including aging itself. So some of those big boys will come on board at some point, it's my prediction, and things will get serious at that point. But look, anyone who wants to experience the Neothink awakening, please come and join. Go to neothink.com, and you'll be shown it's all free. I have a free newsletter there for you. It will just help you see where you can go and what you can do with your life, just starting with your productivity. That's a wonderful place to start. Breaking out of perhaps a stagnation trap or a rut that you're stuck in, into the more exhilarating, like that feeling that you have inside that there's got to be something more to life. You're going to find it at neothink.com.
Yeah. In this community that you're starting, which is the beginning stages of the Neothink country, first digitally, that will be your first glimpse into this beautiful world, this pure, beautiful world on values, value creation, as opposed to the evil, dishonest, the ugly world. And once you start to get that exposure, it becomes more clear of the dichotomy. And it's interesting because most of your members experience coming from the ugly world and then getting into your courses and your teachings and getting that exposure to the beautiful world. And at least my own personal upbringing, I've been brought up in the beautiful world because of, you being my father, and then I get exposure to the ugly world. But nonetheless, that dichotomy, once you start to actually see the difference and to understand and know the difference between the beautiful and the ugly, I will say the Neothink awakening is not necessarily a comfortable process. It can be emotional at times, exhilarating, the best feelings of your life, and at times uncomfortable because you're being exposed to the real world. You're being exposed and shown the truth and the reality about the way things work and about the way things are. And you start to become aware that there's actually evil out there. And it can be an uncomfortable experience, but it's something every person needs to go through. Otherwise, you're not living in reality. But the truth will ultimately set you free.
The reason it can be uncomfortable is because all your life you've been living with illusions all around you, crafted by these intelligent, smart leaders who are the ugly. They have become so good for their own benefit, their own selfish benefit, at crafting these illusions that keep innocent people trapped in the maze, I call it, that they want you in. So you can't really see the world as it is. You're stuck in this maze. You're captivated by their illusions.
The walls of the maze are too high for you to see anything outside.
And they keep you, they put you there. And you just have to live your little life, and then you die. And throughout your life, you're going to have these feelings like, is this all there is? This is all there is. When I was young, I thought there'd be so much more. This is it? But shouldn't be like that. And that's where the discomfort will come in, because you will break down these illusions that are around you. And it's so important, though, like you said, to break those down, because as a parent of 4 children, I know that I love more than anything in this world are my children. And if I knew I was doing something to hurt my children or hurt their future or hurt them after I'm gone, it would be devastating to me. Well, parents and grandparents all across this country, all across the world, don't realize how much harm they are doing to their very own children and their grandchildren by supporting these illusions that are very destructive to humankind. When I sit back and I look at the state of things in America today, and by the way, this is why after nearly a half a century, I'm coming out of my private Neothink club and I'm going public. Because I see what's happening to the world, and particularly to America. So when people break through the illusions, when they have the Neothink awakening, the discomfort comes in the realization that for decades they have been doing things that hurt their children and their grandchildren. They hurt because they're supporting these illusions that are being crafted that are tearing society down, bringing us toward totalitarianism, whether it's to the left with socialism and communism, or to the right with fascism and totalitarianism. Either way, these politicians are crafting illusions with their own agendas that we get behind. We support this person for president, or we support that person for president, or this person for Congress, this person as my senator. We support these people, and that, in the end, is destroying the futures for our children and grandchildren. Let's withdraw from that. Let's move into a new civilization where there is no ruling class whatsoever, that we're all self-leaders living under a constitution that's been developed, that is the Neothink Constitution. It is the fundamental natural law of protection. You need nothing more than the fundamental natural law of protection. Once you have that, everything goes into a mutual value exchange. Now, I know that's really big what I just said. And this Constitution, which we call the prime law, which becomes the supreme law or the Constitution of the new Neothink country, it forbids the use of initiatory force. And it's that simple. It's that simple. I won't recite the law right now, but it's that simple. And can you elaborate on that for a second?
Essentially, it's just the universal axiom, the universal truth that one person can do whatever he or she wants as long as it doesn't harm another person or their property. Just as simple.
Yes. That's right. It's just that simple. Now you say, well, how can you have a whole country with military and prisons and courts and all of this without supervision and regulations and so on and so forth? Everything can work on mutual value exchange. It has never existed on planet Earth, ever. Now, I'm willing to say it's existed throughout the universe in other civilizations, but it's never existed on planet Earth, ever. Always, every civilization has had a ruling class, been a political civilization. This would be the first time. Talk about an experiment. You know, we had the American experiment, the grand experiment, the founding of America. Well, this will be the grand experiment. We'll call it 2.0. This will be the next great experiment on planet Earth.
Be the final experiment.
It would be.
Experiment.
And because it brings us into what Neotech identified as the civilization of the universe. And I'm going to give you a minute to talk, Wally, and please explain to our listeners the civilization of the universe and what that means.
Also known as the Sea of You, shortened, is essentially the point where man chooses to leave behind all irrationality and dishonesty and enter a world of honesty and rationality. And the big point in each civilization, in each conscious civilization throughout the universe has to go through, they go through a crossroads, a decision point, where what's called the nuclear decision threshold, where that civilization has the power to either destroy itself and wipe itself out through, for example, nuclear power, nuclear missiles, or it has the other, on the flip side, that civilization can surpass that and enter a world of rationality and honesty. And from there, that honest, rational, value creation driven civilization enters the Sea of You.
Right. By the way, Dr. Frank R. Wallace, my father, your grandfather, was the one who developed the term, the nuclear decision threshold. Later, I saw Carl Sagan using that, and others have used that. But that term was originally from my father, your grandfather. And in order for a civilization to survive its own power to wipe itself out, they have to eliminate what Dr. Wallace called mysticism. Basically, for our viewers, we'll just say irrationality. That's an easier way to understand this. So when you have the power to wipe yourself out, you can no longer have any irrationality in that civilization, or that's going to happen. You will wipe yourself out. And every civilization reaches this point, the nuclear decision threshold. And either it wipes itself out, or it passes through that threshold and it eliminates what Dr. Wallace called mysticism, or what we'll say irrationality. So everything is honest, fully integrated honesty. And of course, in such a civilization in the universe, you have no ruling classes, no unearned power and false power. Everything's a mutual value exchange. So what we will be doing with the Neothink country, we will be bringing the civilization of the universe to planet Earth. Very simply, that's what we will be doing. We will be introducing a civilization that has no ruling class, that has no initiatory force, that is banished by the prime law, which will be our Constitution, and everything else works through mutual value exchange. And everything that your mind can imagine of every question you can ask, like how can you have a military? How can you have how can you not have regulations on certain things? All of these are answered. I've written a 650-page book called The New World. It's a nonfiction that explains exactly how all of that happens, and it happens with so much more effectiveness and efficiency than you could ever have in a political civilization with a ruling class. You do have regulations, but they're free enterprise regulations, and that only the most successful, benevolent, that brings the greatest value to the people will be the ones who survive. So everything is geared toward bringing the greatest value to the people. Can we ever say that about any civilization that has ever existed, including America? No. Our politicians have no interest in our bureaucratic, regulatory bureaucrats and the media, the legacy media, and so many of these lawyers, they have no interest in what's good for the people. They'll create illusions that they do, but they're the ugly. Remember, they're the intellectually ugly. So that's all false. And we withdraw from that. We start a new country. We bring the civilization of the universe. In other words, only the civilizations that survive their nuclear decision threshold, that means purely rational civilizations, are what remains throughout the universe. And some could be millions, billions years more advanced than we are, but they're the only ones that remain.
And that's the way conscious beings were meant to live.
And we are at that point in our civilization. We are at our nuclear decision threshold. And I have to say, things don't look too good right now. We're in a very dangerous time. This is the reason, as we've had this discussion, I never really wanted to go public. I'm not the type of person who needs attention or wants to be known or famous. That has no interest at all. I get all my value reflection from my family. That's all I need, and that's all I've ever wanted. And now my Neothink family. We have people we love who are our members of the private Neothink clubs, Ascension and the Neothink movement. And we love them. They're like our family members. And I don't need anything beyond us. I don't need glory. I don't need honor. I don't need any of that. And that's why I've always been a private Neothink club. We've had about 2 million people in our club. And that's all I want. My club, as you know, for 55 years, when we go back to my father's time, has always been by invitation only. We find the people we want to invite to our club. And over a half century, we've had 2 million people invited into our club. But we never wanted to be known beyond that. We were very happy, just us. But I see the world deteriorating rapidly. I see that we are now at the nuclear decision threshold. And I realize what's most important to me is the future of my children and my grandchildren and my Neothink family. And I realized that it's necessary now for me to come out and start this public mode and start this new country, a digital country to begin with our Neothink network state, and we will draw people in. We will withdraw from the political civilization and start our value creation civilization. Dare I say a business civilization, but too many people, that name business has been too polluted because business nowadays is just all intertwined with big government. So we can't comfortably use that, although I'd like to. But because I understand what capitalism truly is. But you have all these false connotations on capitalism out there.
Distorted and polluted by the ruling class.
Exactly, because they're threatened by that. They want to keep their power. So I'll hold off on calling it business civilization right now. I'll hold off on calling it pure capitalism, the first time ever on planet Earth. I'll hold off on that. I'll just call it, actually, this was your suggestion, Wallace. Let's just call it the value creation civilization.
Based on pure freedom.
Based on pure freedom. And now what's going to happen is your geniuses of society are going to be free. There's no more web to catch them and eat them alive. That we're just going to go in that. And yes, we will cure aging. All you billionaires who are investing tens and hundreds of millions of dollars. Yes, our civilization will cure aging within your lifetime. There's no other way to do it. So if you really are serious about this, get on board. So go to neothink.com for more information.
All right, let's do this. Let's bring the sea of you to Earth.
That's a deal.
All right.